You know, they say, legend has it, that the more you know about history, the more open it leaves your mind and body to being haunted. Just kidding. I'm Lesley Schierenbeck, the History Chick, and on today's episode, we're going to be showing you some spooky haunts here in Trenton, New Jersey. So this is not it. We're looking for a grave in Riverview Cemetery in Trenton that looks like a door, and actually is like this weird homage to Edgar Allan Poe, but Edgar Allan Poe and or anybody that is associated with him is actually not buried there. So instead, we're going to show you one of Lincoln's former generals that he fired during the Civil War, but was originally from New Jersey. Hometown hero, if you will. Boo! Nothing is scarier than a politician these days. And here at Riverview Cemetery in Trenton, the most famous fired general of Abraham Lincoln is buried. This is the grave of George McClellan and his wife. McClellan would later go on to be a one-term governor here in Jersey from 1878 to 1881. And he is very spookily buried here. He is the highest monument in all of the cemeteries, so you can definitely check that out. Now, McClellan dies at the very young age of 58 of a heart attack. He had been having chest pains for about a week. After he was dismissed from Lincoln and after his career in the governorship, he spent a little bit of time in Europe in between, and some of his kids were born over there. His wife actually dies over in Europe. She vacations there. But McClellan's final words were, "Thank you. I'm at rest now." Aren't we all, George? According to news reports in 1912, residents were shaken by constant ghostly apparitions on this block. And in fact, 728 Cass has a very strange history. It once operated as a grog shop and a Hungarian boarding house. During a fight in the house, it was said that a man was stabbed to death and the murderer fled. The superstitious declared that the ghost of the murdered man haunts the building and the local block and is responsible for all its ghostly outbursts. For all you English nerds that paid a little too much attention to that Edgar Allan Poe unit your teachers went over, here's a piece of weird New Jersey cemetery architecture that's for you. So this is the grave of Truman Betts. He was a 28-year-old doctor that passed away by suicide. Now, legend has it that Truman was in love with a woman that denied him his marriage proposal, and he very soon thereafter offed himself. Now, other records say that he was clinically ill, but regardless, his tombstone is an homage and dedication to Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And so if you look very careful at this chamber door, the word Lenore is inscripted here, and although it was taken down, there was a pallid bust of Pallas that was sitting above it. Just another weird and spooky thing here in Trenton, New Jersey. So in New Jersey, founded in 1848, is the New Jersey State Lunatic Asylum. Now, the interesting tidbit about this place was that it was actually founded by Dorothea Dix, who was a woman that was a pioneer in helping to get people with mental illnesses treatment. Prior to that, if you had any type of mental disease or illness, you would be locked away in a prison, basically left to perish. But what becomes creepy about this New Jersey State Asylum is not when it was founded in 1848, but actually in the 1920s, when a doctor, Dr. Henry Cotton, begins experimenting on many of the patients that are a part of the asylum. Cotton, who actually spoke at various medical conferences, starts talking about how mental illness is linked to rotting organs. And as he begins to experiment, he starts taking out patients' teeth, their tonsils, parts of their colon, in order to prove that once those bits were removed, the insanity would also vanish. But you see, many patients that entered into these walls within 2 weeks had died. In fact, there were 3 cases that actually brought Cotton up to court on this, and by 1925, Cotton himself suffers a series of strokes that deem him temporarily insane. By 1932, Cotton had perished of a heart attack, but perhaps some of these ghosts still linger in most of this abandoned state lunatic asylum. Now, we're not allowed entry into this because, well, it's still used today. I'm at the grave of John Roebling, which coincidentally enough was the family that my grandmother worked for when she first came to America back in the 1960s. The Roeblings, however, are more famously known for the Brooklyn Bridge, and we're going to show you a replica of a little Brooklyn Bridge that is actually nestled away here in New Jersey. Roebling gets his start, makes his money because that bridge is a suspension bridge, baby, so it's unlike anything anybody has ever seen before. And so here we are paying a little homage to John, and we're going to show you a little weird New Jersey mini Brooklyn Bridge in a bit. Well, the history chick is a woman of her word, and we are here outside of Route 29 taking a little look at Roebling's mini suspension bridge. So rumor has it that he built this bridge as a kind of like prototype for what eventually the Brooklyn Bridge was going to be. And so even though we have traversed through rain and caution tape, we just wanted to show you another weird and spooky part of NJ history. One of the oldest and probably spookiest places in Trenton, New Jersey is the old Barracks Museum. So founded in 1758 during the French and Indian War, before America was really America, this place was used to house soldiers. Now in the American Revolution, it was used to house British prisoners of war once George Washington takes command after the battles of Trenton, and Dr. Botto, who was the physician at the time, actually used this place as an infirmary, and to which he started giving smallpox vaccines. You know, disease killed more soldiers in the American Revolution than actual battles did. And so at night, as you walk by, sometimes you might see a couple of soldiers whose souls are still missing, looking for that smallpox vaccine. Nestled away just a few hundred yards off of the Delaware River is this very unknown cemetery to soldiers that died prior to Washington's crossing in Trenton. Now, these graves denote unknown soldiers as their identities were never known, probably young men that were a part of Washington's encampment here in Pennsylvania before he decides to cross the Delaware River in a bold move on Christmas in 1776. You know, the soldiers at this time were tired, they were hungry, they were cold, and a lot of these men died of exposure. They didn't have shoes on their feet, the frostbite was rampant, and disease was running through the camp. In fact, the only soldier who we do know the identity of is a 24-year-old by the name of James Moore, who was a captain in the Army underneath Alexander Hamilton's command. Now, it's quiet here, as it often is, and it's said at nighttime, a lot of these soldiers rise up and try to make their way back home to the rhythm of a fife and drum. If you're interested, find out for yourself. I'm Lesley Schierenbeck, the History Chick. Safe travels and happy Halloween. We're in tune to be, no, fail. This is not it. Vibing to George Washington. He liked to dance. People don't know that about him. He did. He liked to dance, George Washington. Political protests. Spooky. Nothing scarier than activism. For all of you English nerds that paid a little bit too much attention to that Edgar Allan Poe unit in class, here's a useless yet no, I hate